Hey guys, today I'll be outlining how to run Timewalking Ulduar during the Wrath of the Lich King Timewalking event. With patch 9.1 hopefully on the way, I think it's safe to say that at least one, maybe two or three of the next Timewalking raids are going to come up on the schedule in very early Season 2. That means we'll have access to a bunch of 226 gear from Timewalking Black Temple, Ulduar, and Firelands for the next few months. At the very least, it's going to be good catch-up for alts. So let's get started. Now I'm going to treat this with a no-voice pug group in mind, because that's normally how I run these. But if you run with your guild or use voice chat to coordinate, I'm sure your experience is going to be a lot different. Comp-wise, I recommend something like 3 tanks, 4 healers, and some melee and ranged DPS. Smaller groups can go with less, bigger groups can go with more, but if you're pugging, people are going to drop out as you go along, for a million different reasons, even if everything is perfect. You don't want to have to leave and find more people mid-run, so taking more healers and tanks than you need saves you a lot of time and momentum. I usually run with anywhere from 15 to 30 people, so 3 to 4 tanks, 4 to 7 healers, and a ton of DPS. But yeah, do whatever works for you. Now, first off, as soon as you get in, tell your group to not talk to the Lore Keeper. Talking to him puts the first boss on hard mode by activating his 4 bunkers, and the only way to disable them is to spend an extra 5 minutes clearing those bunkers. At the same time, make sure you run to Bran immediately. He's over on the left by the edge of the shield, and click his prompt, because that puts the boss on regular mode and deactivates the bunkers. Basically, you're racing to make sure that you put it on normal before somebody talks to the Lore Keeper and sets it on hard mode, because someone always does. And if they do, you'll either have to disband and reform to reset the instance, or spend the extra time clearing the 4 bunkers. As soon as they're clickable, make sure everyone gets in a vehicle. Demolishers and siege engines each have room for 2 people, but more on that in a minute. If you're in a bike, it's really important you do not use the tar ability. Right now, and for the past, I think, 2 events, it's been bugged, and sometimes when other vehicles' fire lights the tar on fire, it does friendly fire to everyone's vehicles within like 100 yards. So, I've seen one patch of flaming tar melt everyone's vehicles in seconds. Just don't do it. Now, if you're doing this normally, just clear down the middle path. Just clear the storm beacons and the ads, kill anything big like the mechanical spiders if they come in, but otherwise just keep pushing. The green healing pads at the end will put your vehicles back at full health, so run over those when you get there. And when you clear the final trash, after the final pillars, the boss comes out, so make sure everyone's vehicle is topped off and everyone's inside the room. The fight itself is pretty straightforward. If you're being chased, run. Demolishers do most of the work here. Before the fight starts, Demolisher passengers want to use your number 2 ability to shoot down lots of pyrite canisters from the sky, and then use your number 3 ability during the fight to refill your driver's energy. Now, each pyrite canister that you hook gives 50% energy back, so just wait until your driver actually needs some. Don't be wasteful. Demolisher drivers, just stay near the pyrite so your partner can reach them and hook them. And keep stacking pyrite on the boss. That's a driver's number 2 ability. Take your time getting up to 10 stacks, but just try really hard not to let the debuff drop too often. Next up is Razorscale. This one's even easier. Kill the ad waves for a couple minutes until all 4 harpoons in the back are repaired. Click the harpoons whenever they're ready, and once all 4 are fired, she comes down. At that point, pop Hero and burn her, and once she gets to 50%, she stays down. Just avoid her frontal and tanks swap for a debuff, but she'll probably die quicker than any of that becomes relevant. Ignis trash isn't too hard, but just don't go too crazy. The fire tornadoes on the later trash will knock you around, and if you pull too much, tanks can die pretty easily. There's 2 ways to do Ignis, but I prefer the no-brain strategy, so I'll talk about that one first. One tank drags the boss to one of the pools and faces him into it, and everybody else just stacks right behind the boss. Op tanks can pick up ads as they come in, but there's no point in DPSing them. Just hero and burn the boss before he gets strong enough to kill your tank. Aside from that, just toss out a bit of raid healing, lots of tank healing, and don't get caught casting when he casts flame jets or you'll get locked out for a few seconds. If you don't have the DPS to burn him like this, just walk around the room every time he spawns a flame patch. One tank can hold the boss while the other puts the ads, but not themselves, in the fire. At 10 stacks, the ads become molten, and after you bring them to the water, one big hit will instantly shatter them because they're brittle. But really, unless your DPS is extremely low, you should be able to pull up the burn strategy. The next trash is also easy, so enjoy it while it lasts. Just kill the little guys first, and tanks make sure you drag everything out of the shields. XT Deconstructor has 2 phases and a few abilities to watch out for. If you get Light Bomb, get away from your friends until it wears off. If you get Gravity Bomb, get further away from your friends until it wears off. Healers, just be ready for Tympanic Tantrum, which does a ton of damage to the whole raid over a few seconds. It's really easy to get caught off guard by this, but unless someone's standing on you with a bomb at the same time, you shouldn't have too much trouble healing through it. At 75%, the boss stops attacking and you can attack his heart. You can DPS it since it hurts the boss, but don't kill it, or else you activate hard mode and he goes back up to full health and then some. And that's a whole other fight that I'm not going to get into right now. Now, during the heart phase, ranged need to watch out for adds coming from the trash piles around the room. Scrapbots heal the boss if they reach him, and bombbots explode when they die. Just keep your melee away from the bombs and let the ranged handle it. If a few scrapbots heal the boss, you're just fine. There's also pummelers that spawn, but they don't really do anything, so just tank them by the boss and they'll die from cleave. After 30 seconds, the heart phase ends and the regular phase starts again, usually with a tantrum a few seconds later, so healers just be ready to keep everybody alive. Otherwise, the heart phase happens again at 50 and 25%, so just rinse and repeat, and it's a kill. Once you port into the Antechamber, this is where the trash starts to really mess you up. Not every group is going to have trouble with this, but if you have squishy tanks, or your healers are a bit slow to react, it's very easy to wipe here. The easiest way to deal with this trash is for just everyone to do their one job. Tanks, split the adds up, share the pain. Healers, dispel the magic debuff on people when you see it and keep everyone up. DPS, kill Iron Benders first. Tanks, try not to move too much because after a while the robots root themselves in place. So if you leave melee range they might start swinging at people. The next pack, these big robots, each have a flamethrower, so tanks just face them away. That's all you have to worry about. Now the giants just leap around and do a frontal, but it's not that dangerous. They do patrol closer to the doors, so be careful you don't pull them with the middle pack. Things can get really spicy really quick. If you go to the left, you'll get to Assembly of Iron. The easy kill order is Steelbreaker, Runemaster, and Stormcaller, but let's call them big, medium, and small. Have one tank hold the big guy wherever, and the other tank hold the other two a little bit away from them. Healers, you want to dispel the tank holding the big guy whenever he casts Fusion Punch. This is a massive dot that can kill your tank in seconds. Both tanks watch out for the blue runes on the ground. You want DPS to be able to stand in those, but you want to keep the boss out of them. It's a damage buff. Once Steelbreaker's dead, it's pretty straightforward. Keep the bosses off the blue runes like you were before. Get out of the big green runes on the floor. Interrupt the little guy whenever he casts Lightning Whirl. And get away from the little guy whenever he casts Overload. Once it's just the little guy left, keep doing what you're doing before, but also avoid him when he goes into the air. Next is Kologarn. Tanks, all you have to do is tank the main part, that's Kologarn himself, and swap off at 2 or 3 stacks of Crunch armor. Healers, be ready to heal through the shockwave that hits the whole room occasionally. Dodge the blue eye beams and just assume people are going to run them on top of you instead of away, because that's what usually happens. The DPS always want to prioritize Kologarn's right arm whenever it's up, because it grips people to death until you do enough damage to it. If your group has trouble with left and right, just put a skull marker under his right arm and another marker under the other arm. The arms will respawn after they've been dead a while. Just make sure you're on that right arm when it's up, and whenever each arm dies, it spawns a bunch of rock adds. Make sure you AoE them down pretty quick. Whichever tank isn't tanking the boss should pick up these adds right away so they don't start punching anyone. And aside from that, it's rinse, repeat, and win. The trash after Kologarn can easily kill your tanks if you're not careful. There are 8 keepers, and you can pull 2 at a time. You want to kill these evenly, because once one dies, the other enrages. You can also tank these like 50 yards apart if you want. Then the DPS can kill the sparks that they send to one another, which also enrage them. But just killing them evenly will work most of the time, unless your tanks are made out of paper. Auriaya is a simple fight that you can wipe on easily in the first 30 seconds. Put your whole raid around a corner to break line of sight, then have one tank or a hunter with misdirect pull at Auriaya and her cats when she comes around. The cats will absolutely murder your tanks, or anyone who pulls aggro, so pop hero and nuke them down immediately. Tanks are going to need to be quick at holding aggro, and even quicker popping defensives on the pull. It's a good idea to have your biggest defensives like shield wall up as soon as the cats reach you, because you only have to deal with them once, and the fight's easy once they're gone. As for the boss, tanks need to face her at the raid to split a frontal ability, and everyone else needs to stand in front to split that damage. You can mostly ignore the adds that spawn later, since they'll just die from cleave, and when she fears the whole raid, just get back in there and interrupt Sentinel Blast as soon as you can, then stack back up in front of her. If you end up killing the Feral Defender, it'll leave a void zone on the ground, just move out of it, and then stack back in front in a new position. That's it. There's a lot of trash before Hodir, but none of it is that tough. Spread out around the Frost Giants so the whole raid doesn't get frozen by his breath at once, kill the worms that spawn from the snow piles, and whenever there's a Revenant, kill it first, because it reduces your AoE damage on everything else until it's gone. Hodir has a lot of moving parts, but there's only one or two mechanics that can actually wipe your group. First off, always break out frozen NPCs and players first. The NPCs are the ones who spawn campfires and spotlights, they're the ones who give out buffs to the group, and they're the ones who dispel Frost Nova, which goes on you a lot. Without them, things get out of control really quick. The boss doesn't do much damage aside from the ice runes he spawns on the floor, which you just get out of. What will kill you is Biting Cold. That's a debuff that keeps stacking on every player whenever you're not moving or jumping. So keep moving and jumping if you see this debuff stacking on, or stand by a campfire if you can see one. But watch out for when it despawns and you have to start moving again. It can sneak up on you that way. The biggest thing that wipes groups on this boss is Flash Freeze. After a while, Hodir does a long cast called Flash Freeze, and you need to do 3 things during it. Once he starts casting, he spawns 3 big ice runes on the floor. You want to stand next to these, but not on them. At about halfway through his cast, rocks and snow fall on these 3 runes, and as soon as this happens, they become snow mounds that you can step on. You have to get on these snow mounds after the rocks fall on them, but before his cast finishes. If you get on them before the rocks fall, you get knocked far away so that you'll never make it in time, and if you get on after the cast finishes, you're frozen in a block. The boss does a lot of raid damage for a few seconds shortly after each flash freeze, so healers need to heal and DPS need to break everyone out of the ice cubes immediately. You want these NPCs back up buffing and dispelling you, and you want any frozen players out too because they'll be taking damage from the boss, from ice runes on the ground, and biting cold stacks that they can't remove because they're stuck in ice. Again, the biggest part of this is just getting the timing right. When he starts casting Flash Freeze, stand next to the big ice rune, and then hop on them as soon as the snow falls on them. One last note on the buffs. So campfires protect you from biting cold for a while when you're near them. The spotlights give a haste buff, and the lightning debuff that you might see on people will spread a massive damage buff to the first few people to get near them. But don't let any of this distract you and make you fail at Flash Freeze. Next around the inner ring is a couple more of the keepers, but try and drag these back a little more since some of Thorim's trash patrols right near the center area and they're tough. The Thorim trash is these pairs of Vrykul, and they hit really hard and each stack a debuff on your tanks. One increases physical damage taken, and the other increases nature damage taken. Tanks want to swap which one they're tanking when it starts to hurt, but that's about it. The pack of trash under Thorim's platform actually starts the fight, so don't pull them until you're ready. For the Thorim fight, you'll want to have your group split up for an arena team and a hallway team. For the hallway team, you want to send 1 tank, let's say 2 healers, and some DPS, preferably ranged, down the left hallway, which you can open by touching a lever after the first pack of mobs in the arena are dead. Have everybody else stay in the center area. It's easy to get overrun in the arena, so if you want to play it safe, just keep 2/3 of your DPS in the arena. In the arena, just keep killing adds. There are heals to interrupt and shields and other buffs to dispel, and as long as you're getting a few of these taken care of, you shouldn't get overwhelmed. If you have to, you can even use Hero in the arena, since you won't need it later. In the hallway, push forward, but not too fast, since the first adds can stun your tanks a lot. Try and dodge the attack from the mini-boss at the end of the hallway, just don't be on the same side as the arm he raises, but you can survive getting hit. The mini-boss does put up a reflective shield after a while, I think when he gets to 50%, so just watch your health if you're killing yourself. The second half of the hallway is much easier, just kill each pack and then the second mini-boss, and once the door to Thorim's platform opens, hug the right wall so you don't get trapped. If you made it through this part really quick, watch out for if Sif is still standing next to him. The fight becomes hard mode if you reach him while she's still standing there. Otherwise, get to Thorim, jump down into the arena, help them clear up any leftover adds, and then kill the boss. Nothing is really deadly in that last phase, just have your tank swap for Unbalancing Strike. Now Freya has a lot of trash, and some of it's ugly. For the flower packs, you want to kill the Guardian Lasher first because it has an aura that reduces your AoE damage to everything else by 90%. On these large packs with dragons and trees, just face them away, interrupt anything you can, and try not to stand in the storms on the ground. Watch out for Freya patrolling around, especially on the right half of her area, because she sneaks around a little bit. You'll want to kill each of the 3 mini-bosses before you pull Freya. Elder Stonebark knocks the tanks around a little bit, so don't let him wander too far off his spawn point or he does reset. Elder Ironbranch hits the tanks for a lot and traps people in roots that you need to kill. And Elder Brightleaf just spawns sunlight that heals him, so try and move out of it if you can. You can't really do damage to Freya until you've killed 6 waves of her adds, and there are 3 types of waves, so you'll see each one twice. One wave is a water elemental and 2 lashers. Kill these evenly or they will res each other. The second type is a bunch of detonating lashers that attack people randomly. They do blow up within 10 yards whenever they die, so don't kill a whole bunch of them on top of your group, at least not all at once, and heal the raid quickly when they start exploding. The last type is a giant tree. When he spawns, there's mushrooms all over, and you'll be pacified as long as you aren't standing under one. So just stand under the mushrooms and kill the big tree. Easy. Throughout the fight, you'll also want your ranged to be looking out for Ionar's Gift. That's a glowing green tree that spawns in a random spot, sometimes in the water or at the edge of where you're fighting. Just kill it before it finishes growing, or it will heal everything to full. Now, if the fight lasts long enough, you will start to see a bunch of seed pods on the ground near the end of the fight. And these are gonna blow up in a large radius after a while, so just drag the boss away from them. If your DPS is high, you might never see these. Next up is Mimiron, and his trash can be a little tough on tanks. Tanks want to pop a defensive before running into each pack, or else the little boomers, the bombs, will kill you dead. When the spider tanks are low enough, their pilots just fall out, and you'll want to interrupt their ice turret casts. Sometimes you can hop in their vehicles afterwards and use them to pull the next pack, so the tanks won't have to eat bombs to the face. But if you do, just do the same thing, running with the defensive, and you should be fine. After a short train ride, you're at Mimiron, and he's a 4-phase fight, so listen up. Phase 1 has been bugged for at least a year now, so I feel like I should mention how to deal with that. The boss is supposed to do a little roleplay and then attack, but right now he attacks during the first 10 seconds of his roleplay, so he can't be targeted or tanked. There is no easy way to deal with this. Healers should be ready to heal whoever gets aggro until he can be tanked, and quickly res important people if they die. This first phase is probably the deadliest, so I usually call for hero here. You want your raid to spread out a bit to avoid extra raid damage from napalm splashes, and tanks want to have their big defensives ready for Plasma Blast, which is a huge dot that goes on them. And whenever the boss casts Shock Blast, all the melee and tanks need to run away, and try not to step on too many landmines on the way out. Melee really want to pay attention and run out for the Shock Blast because nobody likes to see all their melee wiped out in the first phase. The second phase is easy. Just stay behind the turret whenever it changes directions and avoid red targeting zones on the floor, and then get out of the front whenever he casts Spinning Up, or you'll get machine gunned to death. On the third phase, have melee deal with the adds on the ground while the ranged focus on the head. You can loot the assault bots when they die, find an item in your bags, and then drop it under the head to bring him down for a few seconds. Finally, the fourth phase has all 3 bosses combined. You'll have to run away from the boss for Shock Blast and avoid landmines from phase 1. You'll have to get out of the front of the turret, that's the midsection, when he starts winding up his gun, and you'll have to keep dodging red targeting zones on the floor. Aside from that, your main job is just to kill them evenly, or else they res each other. Melee can't reach the head, so if you don't have a lot of melee, or they all died in phase 1, you might have to slow down until the bottom and middle are as low as the top, or vice versa, and then finish them off. As a quick note, I've started to notice that the first ability in phase 4 is usually the machine gun for the midsection, so just be ready to get out of its way. The trashed up General Vezax is easily the hardest, but if you're a little careful, you might just be fine. More tanks usually makes this part easier. Just share the pain a bit, interrupt what you can, and dodge things that look dangerous, like Bladestorm. When you get to the final trash, try your best to use stuns and interrupts to mitigate some of the damage they're throwing out, but especially just keep the tanks alive. Each time you kill a trash pack, one of the faceless walks forward, so deal with it before you move on to the next pack, otherwise you might get stuck in between packs. Also, when you're killing these, make sure you drag the Void Ad back, because if it knocks everyone back when it dies, you can easily get tossed into the boss. I would say General Vezax is probably the most problematic boss in here. First of all, you can't get mana back by ordinary means, so healers need to make sure they're being efficient and smart about how they spend their mana. Melee DPS and tanks need to rotate interrupts for Searing Flames. It won't wipe the raid group if you miss one interrupt, but if you make it a habit, the tanks and healers will start to have a lot of trouble. Tanks can stand still for his Surge of Darkness, but they should probably hit at least one defensive to make it easier on the healers until it's over. All he does during it is hit harder. The other two mechanics are what are going to make or break this fight for you. First off, there's Shadow Crash, where he shoots a projectile at a ranged player that deals damage and knocks them back. There's no swirl on the ground, no other indication, just the projectile in the air as it moves towards you, so keep your eyes open and dodge, or your healers won't like you. The Shadow Crashes do leave behind a black pool that's good for caster DPS to stand in, but very bad for healers. There are Serenite Vapors that spawn occasionally, and whenever you kill one it spawns a green pool that gives back a little bit of mana, but also stacks a dot on you. Healers need to be really careful if they try using these green pools, and if you do, only step in for a few seconds, and only if you absolutely need the mana. Then there's the most important mechanic of the fight, Mark of the Faceless. This is the reason that melee need to be stacked on the boss, but ranged and healers need to be spread all around the boss, and at a distance. Mark of the Faceless goes on a random ranged player each time, and causes them to drain health from anyone nearby. Even a couple ticks of this drain will easily kill someone and heal the boss for a ton, sometimes up to full health if it's really badly positioned. The best way to deal with this is to have range spread out all around the boss, and make sure you're actually 20-30 yards from the boss so you won't drain the melee or tanks. Ranged need to give each other lots of space, and above all, be careful readjusting after getting tossed away by Shadow Crash or stepping in a black or green pool. There really is no reason for the ranged to be near each other, and if you can maintain 15 yards from each other at least, that's great. Big groups with lots of ranged might have trouble here if they don't follow these rules, so you might even consider putting a few ranged on timeout far away from the boss so that you can give others more room. If you've managed to get this far, Yogg-Saron should be one of the easier bosses to kill. Make sure nobody enters his room before you're ready to pull, because there's no way to reset the fight without wiping. Make sure you've talked to all 4 keepers upstairs in the center chamber, because you'll really want their help. In Phase 1, all you have to do is kill and blow up 2 ads on top of Sarah. Interrupt what you can while you're killing them, but please try to dodge green clouds. Every time someone touches a green cloud, it spawns an extra ad, and you don't want too many of these up when you're transitioning into the next phase. Healers, just be careful, like I said, each ad explodes for a lot of raid damage when it dies, so have your big healing cooldowns ready for the end of Phase 1, as all of the remaining ads are blowing up. Especially if a bunch of people touched clouds and spawned more. As soon as you've gotten those 2 ads to blow up on top of Sarah, she starts monologuing, and you want to get out of the center just to the outside of the pool. In Phase 2, there's essentially an inside and an outside. The outside is where you start, with big, medium, and skinny tentacles. You want to spread loosely and chase them down. The big tentacles have to be tanked, the skinny ones need to be killed so they let go of people, and the medium ones need to be interrupted, and their curses, diseases, and magic should be dispelled whenever you can. Just a few seconds after Phase 2 begins, brain portals open up all around the boss, right at the edge of his force field. Have a few DPS click them to go in, ideally people who have been in the brain rooms before, and once you're in, you get put in one of 3 possible visions. Just hit the neutral mobs to reveal their real form, which is tentacles. Kill these tentacles, and once they're dead, all of them, one side of the vision chamber should open up into the boss's brain. The brain will have a cast bar, and once it finishes, anyone still in the brain room gets mind controlled, permanently. So you have to use the exit portals around the brain to get out before it finishes. Do not cut this close. You have to be right up on the portals to click them and exit, so you don't want to misjudge this. There's no reason to ever cut it close, so if you're inexperienced, just leave early. I'm talking like 10-15 seconds before the cast bar finishes. You can do as many brain phases as you need to, but if you get mind controlled, you are useless for the rest of the fight. If you're part of the team going into the brain rooms, keep in mind that once you come out of the brain room, the next set of portals is already about to spawn within seconds, so you'll be going right back in, and you want to get back in as fast as you can click it. After you get the brain to 30%, it becomes unattackable, and you need to take the portals out. For this last phase, everyone needs to stand close to the boss, stacked up, and it doesn't matter which side, just pick a side and put a marker down. This last phase is where the sanity comes into play. You start the fight with 100, and it tracks it as a debuff, and if your sanity ever starts to run low, run to the giant green spotlights by the walls. They'll fill up your sanity in just a few seconds. To play it safe, I say to DPS the faceless ads over the boss every time, just so you never have to worry about getting overwhelmed in this last phase. The boss will die from cleave damage, or from DPS that you do in between ad spawns. The boss only has one ability that you need to worry about, and that's Lunatic Gaze. It's a short channel, drains sanity every second that you're facing him while he's casting it. All you have to do is face away from the boss when the channel's going on, and you can usually turn around and help DPS ads during this time. This is where you're going to lose sanity, unless you're perfect. So just watch your debuff, and as soon as your sanity starts looking low, go to the sanity wells, refill, don't risk it. This last phase is so forgiving, you'd have to be paying no attention at all to get mind controlled in this last part. Or if you're a healer, you can just spend the whole phase faced away and stacked up. Keep doing that, watch your sanity, and the fight should end. Now for the too long didn't listen version. Flame Leviathan. Run if you're being chased. Demolish your drivers and passengers, coordinate so that you can shoot down, grab, and fire pyrite to keep stacks on the boss. Razorscale. Kill ad waves. Use harpoons. Kill boss. Loot. Ignis. Bring him to a pool. Face him at it. Stack behind it and burn the boss. And don't cast during flame jets. XT Deconstructor. Healers keep the raid healed through Tantrum. DPS but don't kill the heart. And ranged, kill the ads during the heart phases. Assembly of Iron. Kill biggest to smallest. Quickly dispel the tank holding Steelbreaker. Get out of green runes. Stand in blue runes for more DPS. Interrupt the little guy's lightning whirl. And get away whenever he casts Overload or when he goes into the air. Kologarn. The right arm. His right arm is the priority, but kill rock ads whenever they come up when an arm dies. And tanks swap for a stacking debuff. Auriaya. Everyone hide behind a corner. Tanks pop defensives on the pull. Everyone nuke the cats down fast, and everyone stack in front of the boss to split her cone ability. Hodir. Break everyone out of ice blocks, and when Flash Freeze comes, stand next to a big ice rune until snow falls on it, then get on before the cast finishes. Don't step on early, and don't be late. Thorim. Split your group for the hallway and arena, sending about a third of your group to the hallway. Interrupt ad heals and dispel their buffs so the arena team doesn't get overwhelmed. Freya. Kill 6 ad waves, then nuke the boss. Stand under mushrooms. Kill glowing green trees. Be careful killing too many detonating lashers at once. And kill the elemental and the 2 lashers at the same time, or else they resurrect. Mimiron. Get away for Shock Blast in Phase 1, and don't stand in mines. Get behind the turret in Phase 2. In Phase 3, ranged, get on the head, and melee, get on the ground ads. And in Phase 4, do all of that, until you've killed all 3 parts evenly so they don't respawn. General Vezax. Ranged, spread out 15 yards apart if you can, and stay that way. Interrupt Searing Flames, avoid Shadow Crashes, and don't overspend your mana, cause it's not coming back. And finally, Yogg-Saron. Kill 2 ads on top of Sarah in Phase 1, avoid the green clouds, interrupt what you can. In Phase 2, you want to send some DPS into the brain room to kill the ads, then the brain, but make sure they get out using the portals before the boss's cast finishes. Meanwhile, the outside group just kills ads smallest to biggest, and in the last phase, everyone stacks by the boss in one spot, focus down the ads and cleave them with the boss, face away whenever he's channeling Lunatic Gaze, and refill your sanity at the green sanity wells. Hopefully this has been helpful to someone. If you're looking to lead a group through this, I recommend looking at the parts about trash. I've wasted so much more time because of overeager tanks getting completely flattened by trash than I ever have on bosses. And most of the time all you need is a small adjustment or just a single sentence raid warning to smooth things out. That's all it takes. With patch 9.1 coming soon, hopefully, I'm hoping that at least one of these time-walking raids is going to land very early on in the season, so make sure you don't miss it if you want 226 gear for mains or alts. Keep in mind that these items can drop with sockets, even if they're in slots that you wouldn't normally put sockets in Shadowlands. Until then, this has been Luno. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.